This is Boxing Tickets NI in association with SB Sports and Chaco. We're delighted to be joined finally by the main man himself, Jonathan Lewins. How are you, Jono?
Good, Dave, and yourself?
Struggling on, I guess, as we all do. Obviously, I want to thank one of your fighters, obviously Kevin Cronin. He's kept up this vendetta to get you on, and I think he's fearing the worst now that you are on. You're going to spill a few home truths, but delighted they obviously have a man of obviously your stature and and obviously professional sport. Obviously, they come on and have a chat, and I guess get to know a wee bit more behind obviously who you are as obviously a person and what you've come through.
Yeah,
Um, but obviously it's not just boxing you're involved with. You've obviously been a long time involved with kickboxing as well. Is that correct?
yeah. Grew up in kickboxing. The my older brother Parky would have kickboxed and fought in all the shows and around and stuff. So I would have grown up watching him fighting, and that's what basically got me into it. So from a kid, just basically followed suit. My other brother also competed Decky, and yeah, they were just always dragging me to training as well, and um, yeah, just the kickboxing's sort of always been there, always been part of it. So boxing for Crumlin as a junior, but even say as a senior and an adult in kickboxing, I'd always went to Crumlin and sparred out there with the guys and stuff, you know.
And I guess like obviously not giving people's ages and stuff away as well, but obviously you've been at obviously the kickboxing and stuff for quite a while. Like you're obviously a cutsman, betrayed. You've been a
Yeah.
referee, you've been a judge. You've sort of nearly done every sort of role within either boxing or kickboxing.
Well, to some degree now, I done the courses on the stuff. I didn't mind doing the judging, but not the reffing now. The reffing's not for me. I was only asked recently to do a bit of reffing at an event, but no, that's the lads that do the reffing do great, but it's a difficult job. Definitely a difficult job to do, you know. And any ref in any sport. But yeah, I don't really take to the ref. I don't mind the judging. Um, I feel if I'm doing a bit of judging, I feel I'm gonna help with a fair decision. You know,
I,
that'd
gue-
be me thinking about that.
I guess we see so often, and particularly in boxing, obviously, that's the sort of the sport we're mostly involved with. But I think, do you think sometimes maybe more could be explained, and obviously in judging, because you see it in fights where people think it's a close fight. Particularly commentary probably sometimes gives it away more than anything. But people see, oh, it's a close fight. Somebody's maybe only nicked it, and then they find it's 9 rounds to three, or one's given
Yeah.
it 6 rounds one way, or one's given it 6 rounds the other. Do you feel that maybe judging sort of gets slated badly because of a judge's perception and whether he's looking for the aggressive fighter or what's landing? Do you think there could be more done in terms of explaining how judging happens in a sport?
Yeah, definitely. I think if there's a set format to work by, everybody works off the same rule set, and fighters will fight off the same rule set, as opposed to whether someone's just landing cleaner shots and they're better on the outside, or someone being the aggressor and they're throwing more power shots. So, you could have a couple of different judges sitting there and they're looking for different things, and that's where you get a lot of controversy, I feel. Or even you ring a couple of times here. I'll just knock them off. I think along in the amateurs throughout the years of being around it all, I think some judges will be favouring just someone looking busy, even if they're hitting gloves against the defensive fighter, and the defensive fighter could be landing the cleaner shots. So I think there's a lot that could be just cleared up around that, and it would save a lot of hassle and heartbreak for people that are on the wrong end of these decisions, because you get especially young lads coming up, and if they're getting some decisions that they feel they should be winning and they're not getting them decisions, it can very easily turn young guys off the sport, or girls. So I think you know, if there's a better format for it, it would be better going forward for everybody.
Particularly, we see it probably more in UFC and stuff like that, where they've like 4 or 5 different components to sort of look for in terms of ground and pound, or obviously clean
Yeah,
shots, or clinches, or avoiding takedowns and stuff like that. I guess when you have so many different ways, and I guess you yourself obviously will see a way you would judge a fight, but someone the opposite side of the ring from you might be judging it the total opposite. Is that probably why we get so much of a wide sort of scorecard sometimes? Like I've seen scorecards that may have been 10 rounds of a difference.
yeah, yeah, I think so. And I don't agree with it. I understand when a fight is close and it's hard to decide who's winning the fight, then you could move into maybe you're going to favor the aggressor more or whoever's initiating the fight, and then they get like small advantages in the scoring. But really, if someone's landing more shots than someone else, yeah, that should be the guy that's winning. Obviously landing meaningful shots. That's the guy that should be winning really. In saying that, there's a lot to take into consideration with it. So if there was a better format laid out, everybody could work off the same sheet.
Very, very much echo that, because I say sometimes, boxing gets put in the wrong spectrum sometimes because of instances within fights. We've seen it the whole way through the amateur setup, and obviously even in the professional boxing as well. You know, the old saying, the boxing stinks sometimes, and it's more just because people don't understand what that judge is looking for at that particular time in
Yeah,
the fight.
yeah,
Um,
that,
you've obviously had quite a career, I believe, within kickboxing. You've obviously been all around the world with kickboxing. Is sort of boxing now the sort of favorite thing that you sort of stick your focus to, or are you still involved in all aspects of kickboxing as well?
no, I'm pretty much all in the boxing now. But I've always been in the boxing. I've always had some involvement in it, always. But just while I was fighting or had other guys fighting and stuff in the kickboxing, obviously that took up a lot of time. But yeah, look at there's only so many hours in a week, to try do everything, and now with the professional boxing, obviously it takes up a lot of time. So I just have a small crew at the minute, and I'm happy enough with a small crew.
And I guess you need to have a small crew when you have Kevin Cronin involved.
Yeah,
He's at me obviously on a daily basis. And obviously, you know, you obviously training him day out and stuff as well. Like you've had obviously Dylan Madonna obviously in the past
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Coming through. Are you still involved so much with the amateur sort of setup?
Just a small bit. So I'd work a little bit with Monkstown Boxing Club in Dublin. They'd help me out and stuff, even sometimes with some sparring or with using the ring and stuff like that. And the same, like if they need to dig out off me for something, I'd give them a dig out with something. So we have a good relationship, and we work together a long time. And they're a fantastic club, and the amount of work and effort they put in down there, the amount of young lads they have, and the amount of success they have speaks for itself. So they deserve every bit of acknowledgement and success that they get. They have a great team there of coaches and people that help out and stuff. So even with the Monkstown Box Cup they run there, they've a massive tournament that they run there that's international and brings so many people into the country. So they do a great job there. So yeah, I still do have some involvement. I work with Carol Coughlin for a long time. Carol would have been runner up in the last elites. And Carol would have came from kickboxing with myself as well. So Carol won everything in the kickboxing, wanted to get into the boxing, and she's won everything in the boxing pretty much except the elite title there that she was pipped on in the final. So she'll be back again in the elites now in January, and you know I think she's 33 now, so a bit more experience in her, and hopefully this time around might be her year.
It's something I did want to obviously touch on, because more recently we've obviously seen Irish fighters obviously moving, with Dylan Wilson obviously moved across from kickboxing into boxing. But obviously
Yeah,
Jamie Morrissey obviously moved across from Muay Thai into boxing. Is
yeah.
there, I guess the fundamentals they sort of have with punches obviously are involved. Is there much transition sort of needed for them to move across from, or I guess they still have a lot of the elements involved for boxing. It's just not using their feet.
It would depend on the fighter. Like going back, say when I was fighting, um, there would have been maybe a handful of guys that I'd say that would be really good with their hands. Some people would be really good with their legs, and that would be their primary focus. For myself, it was more my hands than my legs. Um, and for the guys that we would have trained, they were all well able to kick and stuff, but a lot of it was boxing because you've two different ranges. When someone's kicking, they're a little bit longer than when you're in punching range. So there's a little bit of adapting to it, but a lot of them would still be doing boxing sparring and stuff too. So some people would adjust comfortable enough, and some people wouldn't adjust at all. Wouldn't be for them. So I think it definitely depends on the individual. Some people are more naturally gifted than others. Some people have to work that bit harder than others. So it would definitely be down to the individual.
Obviously, in a coaching aspect as well with the boxing, like I guess sometimes people don't realize that it's not just you training. Let's say the likes of Kevin, obviously for upcoming fights, you sort of have to go and start a study. You nearly have to be, you know, you have to go and try and find footage of an opponent, and obviously try and work everything out. So a lot of the tasks you will do in preparation for a fight is trying to prepare, say, the likes of Kevin for a potential opponent coming up, seeing how they fight and how you can adapt it. You're nearly trying to get inside the mind of a fighter. So it's a really incredible job that you sort of have to do.
Yeah, well, boxing is so much mental. Like it's so much mental than people would think it is. So in terms of looking at fighters and seeing what they do, see how they react, see when they get caught maybe or get caught with a good shot, how they react to it, if they respond, if they move away, if and their natural instincts of how they react to it when something good happens or when something bad happens. So it's such a huge part of the game, the mental side of it. But isn't YouTube great to have? What did people do 30 years ago
Mm-hmm.
when we didn't have YouTube? Because you'll nearly always find something online, even if it's the slightest bit of footage, you'll find some information there. You
And
know.
obviously, I guess being a father figure as well, obviously fighters like obviously Kevin's obviously just had his first fight back in well over a year.
Yeah.
It's sort of that mental side of things that you sort of discussed there as well. It's because I know when Kevin's fights have been off in the past, I've sort of reached out and said, look, keep going. I guess it's trying to remember the goal and the aim of the sport, but probably more pleasing for you now that after training camps, Kevin's actually getting fights and getting back in the ring and continuing to build his progress.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very tough game anyway. A lot of guys still have to work to get some money in and try. It's like having two full-time jobs, trying to get the training in and trying to work and get a few bob in to keep them going. So, Kevin had a good few setbacks, but in fairness to him, like he's mentally strong like that. He'd be getting up training. Like he's coming from Kerry to come up to Dublin, like that's huge. Like it's nearly unheard of. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't go to Kerry and train all the time, and so like big credit to him for that. But he keeps going, and he's mentally strong with it. And he even for his last camp, like camp was okay. It could have been better, but towards the very end of camp, things were starting to click and fall into place and stuff like that. And he had I think it was his last spar before the last fight. He had a spar with Padraig McCrory.
Mm-hmm.
So Padraig and D came down, which was great, and Padraig's an excellent fighter. So Kevin had to be on his game for it. So they had a great spar. Hopefully they both took plenty away from it. I know Kevin did, and that was a perfect spar then to finish off going into his fight then.
Is it a compliment, I guess, and you, and obviously, if Kevin's obviously coming from Kerry to Dublin to train, does that obviously sort of, I guess it gives you a sort of backhanded compliment, sort of, where you're going, you're crazy to come this, but does that not show the bond that you sort of made with the fighter, that he's sacrificing, time and travel to come to you to have your
Yeah.
expertise?
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Like we get on well, we have a bit of crack, and we get the work done, which is most important. So Kevin comes up, he'll stay in my house and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, we get the work done. The spars, the majority of the spars are all around Dublin anyway. Unless going up the north, but it's a lot more difficult for Kevin going up the north because he's coming from Kerry. So we haven't been up the north sparring, but we've talked about it. We didn't get to return the spar with Padraig there because Kevin was a little bit late back um, ahead of his fight. But we had talked that if he's up, obviously, if you're up in Dublin, we'll try and stay over, and then the next day travel to the north because when Kevin travels up, if Kevin traveled up today, and then we get 2 sessions in today, the sessions are adjusted for his travel because if we put him in for a good quality spar in the afternoon, it's hit and miss if he's going to be a bit flat or if he's firing on all cylinders. So we have to manipulate it a little bit. Maybe we'll school spar or we'll just change the session up and then we'll keep the spar for the next morning when he's a bit fresher. So there's things to consider when the traveling is involved like that.
I guess it's like anything nowadays, it's adjusting, and I guess Kevin's obviously getting to the stage of, I think probably maybe the start of 2023, fighting for his first professional title. I guess, it's
Yeah.
it's maybe potentially in the meantime is staying busy. I know there was potential talks of it before the end of this year, which now obviously don't seem to be happening. But I guess it's keeping him grounded and keeping him ready so that you can get him to peak coming into a title fight at the start of next year.
Yeah, so like we pretty much had a lot of things agreed for Kevin to fight Robbie Burke there for the Celtic title. And through no fault of our own or no fault of Robbie Burke's or his team, Phil and stuff. Phil who would have coached me in Crumlin as well. Through no fault of theirs either. Bit of politics got in the way, and unfortunately that fight's not gonna happen now. Maybe it'll happen down the line. But we've a couple of day clashes with things now before Christmas. But with a bit of luck, we'll still get Kevin out again before Christmas, get some rounds in, and then hopefully go into a big fight then in the new year.
Definitely, as I say, it's keeping him grounded probably more than anything's the problem now, because whenever there was a potential clash of him and Robbie Burke, next month, it's them and that doesn't happen, and so many
Yeah,
fights falling through over the last year. He's going, what's going on, and I guess that's where that relationship you sort of built with him comes true, to go, it's a setback, you've had this before, it's, let's push on, let's build new boundaries. And he's coming down in weight, I guess, as well, potentially
yeah,
obviously one more fight maybe at light heavy and then down to super middleweight.
yeah.
If we could get him down the middle, if we could get him down the middleweight, as and one step further, we make it less talk out of him.
Yeah, maybe. Um, yeah, sure. I think Kevin's on the phone to me more than me missus or anyone else is.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, listen, you never know. Like he make super middle comfortable enough. Like he's been pretty much down at it a couple of times anyway, so he can do it. And we'll see after that. Let him have some fights there, and because he hasn't had to do any big cuts to make it, he just keeps his. He's in fairness, he's good on his diet and stuff like that. He manages his food well, and he stays disciplined with it. So that's half the battle. It'd be different if you're trying to wrestle food away from somebody. Like it's unless you're living with someone 24/7, you can't control what they're eating or what they're not eating. So, but in fairness to him, he's on his weights. We check his weight regularly, and he's always hitting his targets. So his discipline and his dedication is never in question. Which makes things a lot easier.
That has to be the most annoying thing, I see it, around gyms, people put the work in the gym, but then they'll stop off, they chip you on the way home, and they undo all the hard work.
Yeah,
I guess that's where your sort of expertise and everything else comes in, where you're seeing how obviously your fighters are training, and as I say, you nearly have to at a degree and everything sort of nowadays to be able to keep up with the way obviously boxing's moving forward, technology wise and stuff like that. New techniques, and everything else. It's definitely a mental sport, but it's definitely something you still see a long-term future within, Jonathan.
Definitely, yeah. It's always something I've been interested in. I've always loved the professional boxing, even as a kid. When we used to have it on ITV and stuff like that, and you'd get Eubank and Collins and Ben, Nassim Hamed, all them fights and stuff growing up. But yeah, I always loved it, always involved in it, and I always wanted to evolve into the professional boxing. And where that sort of chance came from me was with a kickboxer I had, as in Stephen McAfee. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure aware of Stephen. So Stephen came through in the kickboxing, won everything in the kickboxing, and style wise, it was always suited. He had some amateur boxing fights too, but style wise, I always felt it would have suited him in the professional game. And in fairness, when we were looking at it and looking to turn over, we made a few calls about it, and I spoke to Boxing Ireland, Stephen Sharp and Leonard Gunning. And in fairness, the guys gave Stephen an opportunity, not knowing what to fully expect with a kickboxer coming in, because there wasn't many kickboxers at that point, that a few years ago, that had turned over. So we sent on a little bit of footage, and they said they'd give him a go. And in fairness, on Stephen's pro debut, I think he stole the show that night, and got a lot of he got a lot of good comments about it and stuff. So it set the ball rolling for him there. So but yeah, that's what gave us the kickstart. Obviously, having the fighter to bring into the program, but also having good people like Boxing Ireland that would give him an opportunity to showcase his skills.
Definitely, and I guess we're seeing more and more switching across to boxing now than probably we've ever had. And I guess if,
Yeah,
if someone's good enough, they're always going to make it there. And I guess the good news is for people, if they have kickboxed or any other sort of martial arts, if they can come into boxing and they know they can succeed at it. The good thing is they get a sort of couple of fights to transgress, sort of not going into the deep end straight away. You'll sort of get a journeyman level for a few fights, which helps you transition them slowly bit by bit across.
definitely. The journeymen are essential. A lot of people mightn't realize that when they see someone is fighting someone with not such a great record. But now there is a lot more people domestically on the scene, which is good. There's more and more, which is going to help with making a lot of domestic fights. But in terms of bringing on, developing a fighter, getting them to the next stage, the next stage, the next stage, they have to be built slowly. They can't just go straight into the top level fights or the domestic fights. You know, some people that have massive amateur backgrounds and a really high pedigree um, are in a better position if they need to be fast tracked. But in general, um, having the journeyman, they can progress, and then we look back on the fights and we say, okay, this 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 position wasn't good. This is what you should have done here. This is what we were drilling. This worked. That was good, and from that they can progress on to the next one and the next one. But it's no good keeping people fighting journeymen either. Like, get a couple of learning fights, get into the domestic titles, and let's see where we can go from there. That would be the thinking with everybody anyway.
I think it's that old theory of everybody thinking they're Floyd Mayweather going to go their whole career
Yeah,
undefeated. It's it's not taking too many fights where you think that you're going to be Floyd Mayweather by beating journeyman, but it's
yeah,
obviously learning the levels at the same time and going, you can't keep fighting journeyman, because if you fight journeyman, you're never going to know your level. You're never going to advance up the status. Whereas, and we're seeing more often now that there's a lot more domestic fights happening because people's past that stage of journeyman level and they now want to test themselves in the domestic scene and see how
yeah,
far they can go.
yeah. They can get if you stay around fighting too many journeymen, you can get a false sense of security and believing you're better than you are, that you hit harder than you do. And I've seen it plenty of times. So, um, you can only do so much of it, and they have to get tested and develop each fight. Otherwise, they're going to stay at the same level. But on the domestic scene, there's definitely more guys around now, which is great. It'd be great if we could get more shows going back in Dublin and stuff like that. But you know, there's always shows in Belfast and in the UK, which is not far at all. But yeah, look at there's more and more domestic fights happening, so long may it continue.
Definitely. I'm just keeping an eye on this wee timer here. It's 7 of a minute left. Obviously, want to
Yeah,
thank you for finally coming on and having a chat with us. I guess now that we've broke that sort of first interview, we can probably maybe get you on again in the future. Kevin will probably be winding us both up. We've now obviously got it done. Keep him
yeah.
off me, keep him off my story for a week or so now because he can't ask for you back on again.
Give you a
Um,
break.
but John, I obviously want to thank you very much for coming on, having a chat with us, and giving us a bit of insight as to obviously where you've been and obviously where you're going. And I'm sure we'll catch up with you at some stage in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and appreciate all the work you do for the fighters as well. You give a lot of great publicity to them all, so appreciate that.
Definitely. Well, thanks very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You
Cheers,
too.
John. Will take care. Thanks. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye bye.